And we are back, guys, with another video, and this one is a big one. Now take this as you may, because this is a rumor, so a leak, so obviously you want to take this as you want. But guys, we have some confirmation, and this is some interesting stuff here. In an article by That Park Place, it says the following: exclusive Assassin's Creed Shadows delay was to scale back on YASUKE after historical backlash. So what is this all about? Well, effectively, the reason why the game was delayed, it may have not been because of the polishing that they had to do on the game. Maybe it was to do with more stuff, which is more to do with YASUKE and how they erased some content from the game, which would be potentially questionable and even, I would say, affect certain Japanese audiences which would not like the fact how he is portraying the game or exaggerating his story. A That Park Place source has confirmed that Ubisoft delayed Assassin's Creed Shadows in order to make narrative cuts that severely limit the role of Yasuke in the story. Now that's a big one, that's a massive one. Ubisoft made headlines recently by delaying the game a whole month. Many assumed at the time that Shadows was buggy mess, like Star Wars Outlaws, when it launched. And while that may have been true, we have it in good authority that there's something else going behind the scenes. So let's just check this out. As YouTube host Skill Up mentioned after playing the game for 5 hours, I actually saw his video, it was pretty good actually, pretty good video. He primarily played as Yasuke, but noted that the experience was vastly different and inferior compared to Naoe. According to him, Yasuke lacks the same versatility as Naoe, not just in combat but also in exploration. Surprisingly, Yasuke does not have the same opportunities such as climbing higher towers. This gave the impression that Yasuke is locked in a more limited, one-dimensional role within the game, which is just basically combat, combat, and more combat. That's right. That aligns with a recent rumor communicated to by That Park Place source speaking under the condition of anonymity. So again, this is a rumor from a source which is anonymous, so take it as you want. I'm not here to convince anyone if this is true or not, so you make your own judgment on that. According to our source, the $20 million delay of AC Shadows was not merely to polish the game. Evidence of this can already be shown, but to shift focus away from Yasuke as the main protagonist. That's right, interesting. Evidence of this can already be seen in the marketing, where Yasuke is increasingly absent from prominent posters that features Naoe more prominently instead. Just one example is on the main Assassin's Creed website in this promotion here on the front page. Before, it was Yasuke and Naoe standing side by side. Now it's just purely Naoe's face zoomed in to look at her eyes, almost like being mesmerized by Naoe's ninja skills, right? I mean, this is it, like it's literally 100% Naoe. Even in the system requirements, of course, they haven't erased Yasuke completely, because there's still Yasuke here, as you can see here, but also in the system requirements, for example here, again, the only person showing up is Naoe, again, once more. Coincidence? I have no idea, but guys, this is very, very interesting how more and more the promotional materials kind of tend to sideline Yasuke a bit more. Now, what else we have? This appears to be a reaction to the backlash Ubisoft has faced, not only from longtime fans of the franchise, but also from many Japanese critics, angered by Yasuke's portrayal as a far more significant historical figure than he actually was. Let's remember that Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed Japan had to send a letter of apology to the Japanese people because they made so many mistakes. I mean, it's just crazy. Anyway, furthermore, rumors suggest that many of Yasuke's quests, including main and side content, have been removed or heavily altered. These cuts are reportedly intended to avoid offending Japanese audiences and historians who have criticized the game's historical inaccuracies. A significant portion of the controversy ties back with Thomas Lockley, as you know, the infamous Thomas Lockley, whose work Ubisoft allegedly used as a primary inspiration to Yasuke's character. Lockley, who co-authored African Samurai, The True Story of Yasuke, a legendary black warrior in feudal Japan, has been accused of grossly exaggerating and fabricating much of Yasuke's history. His portrayal has been widely debunked by historians who argue that Yasuke was likely a bodyguard and servant rather than a full-fledged legendary samurai, as Lockley is claiming. Lockley's dismissal from discussions around the game has been subtle but noticeable. Ubisoft initially promoted him as a key source for the character, but has since gone silent on his involvement. This silence coincides with a wave of backlash from scholars, particularly in Japan, who criticized Lockley, claims as speculative at best and outright false at worst. I mean, yeah, when you have experts kind of criticizing this guy, I mean, this guy wanted to make some money selling his book, and he went completely silent after he was called out by actual Japanese experts. It's rumored that some of the Yasuke's cut content in the game, including quests tied to his supposed rise as a samurai, were directly influenced by Lockley's work and later removed to avoid further controversy. Ubisoft's response to this backlash seems to include a shift in marketing focus, with greater emphasis on Naoe's parkour abilities, system, and the game's shinobi elements. Trailers that initially highlighted Yasuke's samurai way during the game's announcement are now conspicuous, less centered on him, reflecting a clear pivot on how the game is presented. Whether this last-minute reworking can salvage the project or not remains to be seen, but the change seems like a desperate attempt to appease critics and salvage some public perception. Now, as we have here, it doesn't end there. No. There's more stuff. The delay was used, apparently, also to refine Naoe's parkour system significantly and to heavily alter many dialogue interactions between Yasuke, Naoe, and the NPCs through the history. However, as our source mentions, they could only do so much. Interesting. Among the dialogue changes were discussions where Yasuke was previously presented as a samurai and celebrated for his renown among Japanese NPCs. Now, it seems this has been altered to focus on the Crete, which will be built by both the main characters, with Naoe taking a more prominent role in the story. Very, very interesting. Ubisoft has also reworked cutscenes where Yasuke was initially featured more prominently, with Naoe now portrayed as the driving force of the duo. From what we understand, it feels almost as though Naoe has taken the lead role, even though players will still have the option to switch between the two characters. So maybe the canon story mode has also been altered to give kind of Naoe the protagonism as the leader of the assassins in feudal Japan. Our source also stated that the delay was primarily aimed at re-evaluating Yasuke's role to avoid further bad press from historical fanatics. Yeah, that's right, guys, this is interesting. Ubisoft reportedly sought to minimize criticism from Japanese historians by making the game more historically accurate where possible. However, as seen in recent previews, many inaccuracies still remain. For example, this is an interesting one. The watermelons were not introduced in Japan during the Sengoku era, despite their presence in the game. Watermelons were brought to Japan much later, during the Edo period in the 17th century. So again, it's a small thing, but these small things kind of add up in the game, right? Additionally, the game's depiction of Japanese seasons is historically and geographically inaccurate, with cherry blossoms incorrectly showing blooming during the summer rather than spring. And this is an obvious one because everybody knows the Spring Sakura Festival in Japan, which happens in April and March, April, right? I mean, everyone knows about this, and somehow in Ubisoft, they got it wrong, which is just crazy, right? I mean, come on, man. Now, so how much did Ubisoft actually change? According to the source, the most egregious inaccuracies were related to Yasuke's portrayal, and efforts were made to mitigate these issues. However, they added that there are still individuals within Ubisoft who remain adamant that Yasuke character will resonate with players and become a success despite the backlash and mounting criticism. Interesting stuff, guys, interesting stuff. So yeah, it doesn't help their case that Rise of the Ronin, another samurai-themed game by Team Ninja, the creators of Nioh, has been well received and recently announced its PC release date in March the 11th, just 9 days before Shadow. So again, another problem here, guys. This is interesting, right? This timing will almost certain siphon players away from Ubisoft, especially since Rise of Ronin is expected to deliver a far more accurate and authentic samurai experience. One can't help but wonder if this was a deliberate move by the Japanese developers of Rise of Ronin to send a pointed message to Ubisoft about their blatant historical ignorance, right? I mean, I don't know. It could be, could be not. We have no idea. But guys, what happens here is the fact that it's clear, it's 100% clear that there have been some changes. Ubisoft has changed some elements of the game. They have basically made it look like more like Naoe has more protagonism now in the game. They're promoting her a bit more, even the trailers and the gameplay and stuff like that. So does this mean that this will make or break the game? I don't personally think so. I mean, if people like the game, they will like the game. If people want to buy the game, they're going to buy the game. So that's not going to change whatsoever. But what is going to change is the fact that many people who are critics of history, maybe they will feel better about the fact that, you know, Ubisoft wants to respect a bit more the culture in Japan about this historical action figure game, right? Which is effectively true, because, you know, Ubisoft is saying that, it's their inspiration of Japan, is not real life and whatever, which is true. But they say plenty of times that, you know, it's a historical kind of inspired game, which means that they want to tend to have some sort of fidelity in the actual game. So guys, that's it for today's video. Take it as you wish, of course, with a pinch of salt or not with a heap of salt. I have no idea. This is just a leak, a rumor from a source. So we shall see how the game turns up. I am pretty sure the game is going to sell pretty well, most likely like maybe 5 million copies approximately, maybe. But this is not going to save Ubisoft. That's the problem. This is not going to save Ubisoft, because a single game cannot salvage the errors that the company made over the last 5 years. It's just not going to happen. So guys, that's it for today's video. As always, see you later in the next ones.